And so this is sort of a visual that is like what I describe as the intensity and timeline of product commercialization. And you have this moment where there's like an idea. There's an engineer who's like, I'm going to make Gmail. And at that moment, there's not very many people involved. It's at the beginning and it's just an idea. And so the intensity, given the fact that there's not very many people involved, is relatively low. And as you go through the product life cycle, you need to get different groups of people involved at different times, which leads to different levels of intensity. And so as the idea starts to become more than an idea and into like an engineering design and customer research and feedback from sales customers, you start to have more of these people involved. And you can imagine as you get more people involved, the email threads get longer, the docs get more complicated, the intensity rises. And you get to a place where you all finally say, wait, that is a great idea. It is validated by the market. It is legal to do in the countries that we want to do it. There is a sales team that has been hired and we have the headcount to go and do it. Let's start doing it. And then suddenly intensity comes down because there's only so many people who can actually go build that product. And so all of those people may go start working on another product and be intensive on a different thing. And so at any given time, any of us and any of the teams we work with can be bringing multiple products to market because our marketing team doesn't need to be in the idea stage. It needs to be in another stage. And so they get pulled in at different times. And as the team goes and does the concept and the build and you start to develop it and you realize that you need another engineering team involved, or you've run afoul of a potential policy you didn't expect because you're using some infrastructure you didn't plan to use. So you need to go back to legal. Your intensity builds and builds and builds and builds until you have this moment where you're like, we need the sales team involved and we need an event. And it is this moment where like people are excited, it goes, and then it gets in the market and it kind of slows down. And over time, hopefully, thanks to having awesome site reliability engineering, it scales. There's billions of users using it. And all of us are focused on the next innovation. We've moved on to something else until that moment when people are like, Google Wallet could be really cooler if it did Bitcoin. And you start the process all over again. And you start building with a new idea or a new feature and different people come in. And so like what my job is sort of to manage the pipeline of things that are going through this process for one set of product areas and make sure that we're pulling in the right people at the right time and make sure that we're doing headcount planning well ahead of things, that we've got lawyers who are signed up to do it. And where we get stuck is when we don't have a well-oiled machine of communication that has planned out what resources people need and how to go about things.
Can I add something?
Please.
So from some students I've talked to this morning, there's been a lot of questions like, what are the skills that you learned at Middlebury that would help in something like this? And I feel like a few of the things that came up just from how Sam was describing that is, one, working in teams is so important. So many of these things that we're doing on are being pulled in many, many different teams. And in order to work effectively in teams, communication. So both how is your written communication? I think something you learn here really, really well. Like how can you construct an argument and argue a POV, a point of view with these large teams that you have? And then also verbally, how can you present your opinion and how can you kind of influence other people based on your opinion? And then the third thing is problem solving. So it seems relatively straightforward when you see it on this path, but many of these projects are so ambiguous. And so you're coming together as a team and you're trying to figure out creative solutions and you're trying to break down big, scary problems into small chunks that you can tackle together as a team.
Does anybody know off the top of their head, the 3 categories of GBO how?
Lift yourself and others. Respect, 3 respects, lift yourself and others, and then drive amazing work.
Okay.
Those are the 3.
So when we set sort of like when you work with your manager at Google, you sit down each quarter and you say, these are the things that we're going to go do. And if you're a software engineer, there's pieces of code you're going to send. If you're in the sales organization, there's revenue and customer meetings you're going to go have. And we call that the what, and it's your expectations. They used to be referred to as OKRs. We've updated the process a little bit. OKRs standard for objective key results. there's another thing we do that is the how, and it's how we're going to do those things. And every organization, GBO is our business organization. It has a version of those. I believe engineering and other teams have their own versions of these. One of the ones that I see that comes up over and over and over and over again, especially in people who work on bringing products to market along the way, is thrive in ambiguity. Because there is no playbook. Like, this is the playbook. And for every single product, all of these steps could look totally different. Like, this is all there is to go from. And so navigating that ambiguity and being comfortable working with others to sort of ask the right questions and get to a place where you're aligned and have a shared vision on even like the next 3 steps, let alone the next 40, is 90% of the job.
I think another thing that folks miss is the ability to manage their time and prioritize. I think in my world, prioritization exercises happen daily. There are times when I'm working on a deal and another more urgent deal comes up, or hey, an executive needs this ASAP. Like, we need to figure out how to get this done. What needs to be deprioritized so I can achieve that objective? And I think managing time is super important, right? Knowing when to tackle a project, when to ask for help, right? Reaching out if you need it. Trying to assess how long it would take you to complete a task, and then sort of making sure that you can meet deadlines on time is really important, because we serve so many users, so many customers. We want to make sure that they get the best service as possible. So as you're working on projects here at Middlebury or outside and internships and clubs, think about ways in which you can improve your prioritization efforts and how you manage your time, because those are skills that you'll be asked about in interview questions, right? Whether it's a hypothetical question or behavioral question, folks will want to know, how well do you work under pressure, and what do you do? How do you respond when you are, under immense deadlines? So think about those as you're navigating your time here at Middlebury.
So this is a diagram that I use in my function. It's part of actually our new hire training process. And it's sort of similar. You have the gears on one side, the money on the other side. So you've got the product and the market that you're trying to find product market fit. And this is a really lightweight version of sort of the steps that are in that graph of intensity. And we can chat through a little bit like the different roles people have. But I'm curious if anybody has an example product that they might want to bring to market. Collab. Okay. So it's like a sandbox playground for software. Okay. So one of the things that's interesting, you just named a product that exists, right? Which means we can start anywhere on the circle. So do we want to start with the launch of the product? Oops. Planning a new feature? Planning. Let's do planning starting from a POPs perspective, because we can't build products without people.
Yeah, so the planning from the POPs perspective would first be looking at the teams. So we'd be thinking about, okay, what are we trying to do? Do we have the right people already at Google, or do we have to go hire some new people to work on this? Let's assume that we've hired the right people. Now, do we have the right organizational design, which is a fancy word to say the right team setup? Like, do the right teams exist, and are they set up correctly to work together? So we would be building the teams that need to work together.
Yep. So you're going to have HR people involved. You're going to have strategy and operations teams involved in order to map the different teams. You're going to have recruiters potentially involved if you've decided you need more people. And that can be the starting point of this whole thing. Like, hey, Collab is out here. We want to make Collab into a 50 market product as opposed to a 20 market product. If we want to do that, what are all the people in planning that we need? Then let's go to, we have all the people in place. Let's talk sales and marketing prio.
We wanted more markets. Okay, so then the GTM go-to-market team is going to look at all of the markets in the United States and see where people are really interested in running some machine learning. And they'll say, you know what, the New York, Chicago, Los Angeles already kind of taken care of. I'm assuming we're doing just this rollout in the US because I say so. So we're going to focus on kind of like our tier 2 cities in, San Francisco, Columbus, Ohio, and Des Moines, Iowa. And they are going to try to understand the features of the existing product that really resonate with those markets. Maybe in those markets, competitive products aren't available. And so or they have features that that aren't comparable with our product. So we have a better set of features. So they're going to put together like a packet of like all the things that are awesome about this particular product for those markets. They're going to hand that down to the salespeople who are going to read them in detail, develop like a pretty nuanced understanding. And well, I guess there wouldn't be salespeople if we're talking about a consumer facing product, but
There might be. So you would have potentially an organization that does community engagement. And so they're going to say, hey, we want to take this to market. And in order to prioritize these 6 markets, we want to have a Google Code Lab experience in a whole bunch of retail stores. And because it's not tax season, we know H&R Blocks are closed. So we're going to hire our BD team to go negotiate lease agreements. We're going to rebrand a bunch of HR and Block stores into Google Colab experience centers. And we will be now scaling and prioritizing certain markets. I'm going to skip us ahead in the spirit of time to sales tools and dashboards. So we need to know if that's working. Like we said, we were going to go to those markets. We need to build the tools. We need analysts who can come in and collect the data that says, where are people signing up for Colab? Are the cities that we're targeting cities that people are using it? We put quotas on our salespeople and said, go get adoption in these markets. Get out there, get out there, get out there. Did they hit their quota? Are they going to get paid their sales bonus? Like, we need sales dashboards to tell us if we're going to get there. And now you're in market and people are using Colab and you're having this moment where you're like, have we overinvested? Did we open up a whole bunch of H&R Block stores that nobody's coming into and that we're wasting a bunch of money? And so you have your G&A teams, your finance partners, your legal partners. Like, can we get out of these leases? No, this was a terrible market for us. It's not working. Let's back away. And so you have a feedback loop that starts to, because you have the sales dashboards, you're getting the data to say, did we have the right investment? And you're starting to get into more of these central strategy teams that our engineering teams are like, what is wrong with those sales buffoons? Like, I did all of this work and now like they're telling me they can't even launch in these markets. And we have the psychological safety to say, yeah, our bad.
We launched a product, we focused regionally, and the feedback from the early phases was bad. We had to pull out a bunch of money. Now what do? You have kind of 2 options. You put a bullet in it, which you hear Google doing all the time. You say, all right, that was a big mistake. It was a waste of money. We're going to shut it down. Or we say we were wrong. And what did we do wrong? And how do we fix the direction? And that's where you get up into, we've gathered the customer feedback and the market requirements of a slightly different twist on this product. Hey, instead of just launching regionally where we have a US version that is slow but does these other things, and we found that actually all the user feedback is super similar across all the different regions. For the same amount of money, maybe we can run a product globally that can do all these common things that works for everyone but runs cheaper. So that takes us into this product engineering cycle, I think, if I'm hitting the right spot, which is redefine the product direction. This actually happened in payments a couple of years ago where they were live in multiple places around the world. It was expensive. Each product had features that other people wanted, but not what those people wanted. And we reset, built a new strategy, started to build a roadmap of the products, and the product managers are off and running in this case, it'll be in that like build spike in the middle of the other graph where they are defining roadmaps, starting to turn out product requirements, and the engineering teams are ramping. Again, this might be a second cycle through with people ops. If we're saying now we need to ramp different types of people, we need new engineering teams, and here's what they're going to do. And we staff the teams. We organize in engineering around that, working with people ops on org structure, and then essentially just give them their mission, give them the resources, and let them run independently on that product roadmap as aggressively as possible. And that's like that big spike in the earlier picture where we have a lot of work to do and then try to race to market launch in the different markets. And that roadmap, that sometimes with one product, you might have multiple cycles overlapping, like Sam talked about earlier on the previous slide. Sometimes though, you just do this one big build and launch and you go into kind of market maintenance mode on that product and the teams are rolling off onto other things. So that's kind of in that stage.
Yeah, so you go through all that build stage and you come back to the beginning of the circle, and the product and eng feedback comes from the sales team who says the customers told us they didn't like it. And so then the engineering team and the product team has to prioritize it and do market research. And a lot of times they say the sales teams are idiots. They don't know what they're talking about. So then they go hire a market research team. And so they need a lawyer to go negotiate a contract. And then the market research comes back and they're like, oh, sales team's not as wrong as we thought, our bad. And so then they reprioritize, they build, they have to test it, and they call the sales team again. They say, hey, can you test this? And the sales team's like, ooh, that's not what we asked for. But then they test it and it's actually better. And there's this awesome proof point. And we come back and we're like, we need a lot more salespeople. Hey, Jamie, can you get us some headcount and help us organize and figure out how we get more people? And the whole cycle begins again. And all of us get involved at all of these different stages, just depending on what the need is. And that is the life cycle of a product.